This weird was month, right? Hey, what's up? I'm Allie and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the 11 books that I read in March. So March was a weird month. I hope y'all doing okay. Hope y'all staying the hell home. When it comes to my wrap-ups, I leave timestamps down below for all the titles that I talk about, so if you're looking for a review of a specific title, you can hop down there. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into my wrap-up. So in March I read 11 things. I had read 2,320 pages, which is the most it has been for quite some time. So normally I just listen to a lot of things, and saying that, I listened to 44 hours of audiobook. I was doing a lot of things, and therefore audiobooks was essentially the best way for me to go. It was the only way I could actually read anything because I was having a hard time sitting down and focusing on anything that wasn't Animal Crossing. The first thing that I had read for the month was By Your Side by Casey West. It feels like a lifetime ago when I read this because I was still reading this when I was working. I can't even remember the last time that I worked, like went into work. By Your Side is a YA contemporary romance, and it is about this girl who gets locked in a library and she thinks she's alone until she realizes that she is locked in there with someone else. They're not quite friends. He has a bad reputation and she doesn't want to get on the wrong side of things. She thinks that he's lying to her. So some weird tension is happening while they're in the library. I will say I thought that was what the whole book was going to be about, but it actually, that's only like a quarter of the book, and the rest of it is what happens outside of the library, and there's other things going on as well. I don't want to give too many spoilers, but something happens with the boy that she really, really likes, and she feels like she kind of gets sucked into kind of caring for him and reevaluating her feelings after she has been trapped in the library with this other guy. And she also is evaluating her friendships and things like that, and so it was a lot more complex than just two people stuck in a library. There was a lot of layering of different issues happening with her friends, with his home life, with other things going on, who she wants to be, things like that. And I really liked those different layers of the story because here I was thinking it was just going to be a cute, fluffy romance, and it was a lot more than that. I really, really enjoyed this. Casey West just really has a fun way of telling these stories, and I will say I'm not giving it a full 5 stars. I did rate it a 4 stars just because I felt like some of it was convenient, and as someone who works in the library, there tends to be at least one door that you can at least exit out of. So they wouldn't have been stuck there for like the 4 days that they were. So I just found it a little unrealistic at times, but for enjoyment purposes, I did really enjoy it. So next we have Wicked As You Wish, and I ended up reading the arc of this. This did come out in March, and this is a really hard book to describe. Essentially, this takes place in our modern world, but magic has always been a thing, and it treats fairy tale creatures like they are part of history, and it deals with like these different magical worlds as if they are parts of our globe and things like that, and how there was like all these magical wars. Wonderland doesn't exist anymore because of this war and things like that, but the main premise of this is essentially that there is a prince in hiding. He ends up becoming our main character's neighbor, and they become best friends. They become best friends over time. And it ends up coming down to the Ice Queen may be on the hunt for him and is possibly closer than they think. So a lot of things go down. They end up in being transported into one of these other magical worlds, and they end up with a group of other kids who are highly skilled in certain things, mostly fighting. And it is them I feel like I am just butchering explaining this, okay? I'm trying really hard, but it's all over the place, honestly. Yeah, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of characters to follow, and it's a lot more than just the premise that she might be a spellbreaker in order to break his kingdom out of ice. But the Ice Queen is after them, and they go on this voyage in order to try to find his kingdom and melt the ice, so to say, and it was just a little too much at times. I found that it was really hard to sit down and read in one consistent go because it was just so much information being thrown at you at once, and it was just too much at times. I also enjoyed it a lot more when the point of views were separated and our characters were separated. I just thought that that was far more interesting than whenever they're all together and we're just seeing the same thing from several different points of views. So I really hope in the next part of this series that there is more of that separation. I will say, for the most part, I didn't really care for a lot of these characters, but there are at least 2 characters that I have fallen absolutely in love with, and I'm just rooting for them. I want them to be a thing, to happen, to continue, and to be happy, but I don't think it's going to happen because one of my favorite parts of this is that there are riddles. I love solving riddles in books, so that's what these tabs are. They are the riddles, and I've been excited to see how those riddles come true or how they happen, what happens, so I'm very excited about that, and I probably will be continuing on. I ended up giving this a 3-star. Again, I just felt like it was trying to tackle a little too much. There was a lot going on, and it was just a little hard to devour at times. Next we have Little Gray Girl, and this is a continuation from Begone the Raggedy Witches. This is the second one in that series, and this series is just so fun. I consider this a middle grade horror book because it is scary. This one was especially scary. It deals with essentially things that happened from the first one. And we are now back into the Raggedy Witches realm, but of course we are living in the castle now. Our main character keeps seeing what she believes is a little gray girl. She is this ghost, but she's drawing these things, and anyone who touches these drawings just becomes so overwhelmed with emotions of just like sadness and anger, and it's just making people around her kind of give up on life. And so this is her trying to battle against that, and it is terrifying at times and scary. And I will say it was a little frustrating because as an adult I'm like there's so many ways we could fix this, and of course she's a much younger person, so her brain was not thinking quite at the full capacity that mine was. So it was a little frustrating at times because I was like, I need this to end. Like, I know what is causing these things, and I need you to see this sooner instead of spending all this time trying to figure out what is going on. I will say I really enjoy this writing. I enjoy this world. I love these characters. They're so quirky and fun and fantastical, but at the same time there's just like this underlying dark edge, and I feel like it deals with heavy topics without being too much. So I ended up giving this a 4 out of 5 stars as well. You will see that this is a trend. There was only 2 things I did not give 4 stars for the month. So next we have Heartstopper Volume 3. I recently as in December, fell in love with Heartstopper. It is an online graphic novel, and it is now in physical format, but you can still read it online for free, and it's so cute. It's about 2 boys who are essentially falling in love, and what that means. One who is openly out, and one who wasn't even sure what he was to begin with, and who is dealing with this. And this volume in particular deals with them coming out as a couple and the struggles that come with that, and I just thought that was so cute. There was also other romances hinted at in this, and I loved hearing about those relationships. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. It is just absolutely adorable. I love it. I think I didn't rate this one as high because I just didn't enjoy it as much. There wasn't anything wrong with the storyline necessarily, but I just felt like it was a lot of stalling, in my opinion. Next, we have Ninth House, and of course there are a lot of mixed feelings I've been seeing about this book. You can see as I was reading it, I was like, I'm not really enjoying this. Until I looked and I was like, well, I must be enjoying it enough because I got it tabbed the hell up. So Ninth House is Leigh Bardugo's adult debut, and it takes place within a secret society. Our main character has lived a dark past life, and in order to save herself, essentially, she has been taken in by the secret society, and she is kind of in charge of learning their ways and keeping order within the society, but she's trying to fit herself into a mold in order to be this. She doesn't want to be her old, wild, crazy self, but those feelings start to come through when you realize there's a lot happening within the society that you don't really know about or understand, and it's got its own dark secrets, and there's a murder mystery, there's a missing person, like you don't really know what's this magical system. It's wild, you never know what's going to happen, and I personally wasn't too sure if I was going to enjoy it. It took me close to 4 months to read this book. It took me a long ass time. The only reason I really got through it is because I was buddy reading it with Richard Reeds, and he said the same thing, that he wasn't sure if he would have finished it if it hadn't been for the buddy read. However, I ended up rating this 4 stars. The second half of this book I felt like was so good. It was so good. I just like couldn't stop eating up all this dark stuff that was happening. I really enjoyed the second half. The first half, however, oh god. The first half is kind of a nightmare in writing scheme. I feel like Leigh Bardugo's writing was not very good in this. This might be of unpopular opinion because I know a lot of people who didn't like it still enjoyed the writing to some degree, but it just wasn't good. Basically, it was like, how can we make this the most pretentious as possible, and let's roll with that. Like, this is supposed to be about murder and dark societies, and the first half of this was just so bogged down with like extra wording, and it just ended up not being a good time. It just felt so unrelatable, even though she's supposed to be what I believe a more relatable character because she kind of came into this secret society not knowing anything. And it was hard to get into. She's very cold and distant and bitchy, and you just can't get into her mindset, even though you need to. I had a lot more fun reading the past parts than I did the present, just because she was a much more open person then, and I get what she was trying to do, but at the end of the day, it just didn't really work in order to connect to the character in some way, which then in case I couldn't connect to the story a lot. It also had a lot of convenient things happening. There weren't a lot of things tied in. I was trying to tab things that were foreshadowing, but Leigh Bardugo literally presents the thing that is going to happen right before it happens. Like, literally presents it, and I was just like, this, like, you had to put this in here for the convenience. Like, if you hadn't put this in here, it would have been more shocking. But the fact that you had to add this in here, like, certain things with the magic system just conveniently work out to our character's favor and things like that, and it's just like she's constantly on the verge of death, but like there's always a way to bring her back. She never has to sleep, like things like that that just wouldn't normally. I feel like, I don't know, it says that there's supposed to be some give for these things, but I feel like the things that she was giving weren't that great, so it just was too convenient at times. I still enjoyed it for the most part, so 4 stars for this. I really thought about it for like days after, like all the things that happened in the last half and all the things that the character experienced, and I did really enjoy that. I'm hoping that the next book in the series, we won't have all this bogged downness in the beginning of it, and now we're really going to get into the depths of it, because now she is much more open, she is being who she is, and she doesn't really care, and we're also getting more of the other characters involved instead of them kind of being at a distance and just talking to them from time to time. So there is a ship in this that I'm rooting for, but I don't think it's going to happen, and I don't think it's a ship that everyone else is rooting for, so I also didn't find the scenes as disturbing as people were describing them, so I don't know, like trigger warnings and stuff, but like I honestly didn't find most of that weird or disturbing. Like, I've read much worse things in YA fantasy. Next we have 10 Blind Dates. This is when we start getting into all the contemporary that I read because I just couldn't focus on anything too deep or dark or weird. So 10 Blind Dates, which is about a girl, her and her boyfriend break up, and she goes to spend the holidays at her grandma's house. She comes from a very large family, which I really appreciated because I also come from a very large family, so I know what it's like to walk in at grandma's house and it's absolute chaos. Essentially, her family finds out about her breakup, and in order to help her, they decide that they're going to set her up on 10 blind dates set up by different people within the family. So she goes on these dates, and of course there is another romance that is happening while all this is happening. Really enjoyable. I loved seeing the family aspect of it. I really also loved the dates. There were some that were fun, there were some that went well, there were some that were terrible, and I loved seeing all these dates because I know how hard it can be to think of these things when you're writing a story, to try to make them creative and unique and still mean something to the story. So I ended up really liking those aspects. The one big thing that I didn't like is that the romance had no chemistry. The couples that end up together or whatever just have no chemistry, and it was just kind of awkward throughout the whole book. All their interactions to me were just more awkward than anything, and there was just like no good, I don't know, there was no good lead up, there was no, like, I wanted like some sort of weird like random steamy scene that happens at some point to solidify that, hey, these two like each other, but you don't really get it other than like, oh, hey, I like you. Do you like me? Oh, we like each other. Okay. So it just, I don't know, like that fell flat for me, but I loved all the other aspects of the story. I ended up giving this 4 stars as well. Again, I enjoyed all the other aspects of it because the romance is really, like, really, it's not even the main priority of the story. It's like way down there on priority list, which is weird because I think it's supposed to be a romance, but it just wasn't there for me. But all the other aspects of it were so fun and so enjoyable. Next we have the Unhoneymooners, a guy and a girl, and their siblings are actually marrying each other, and her sister had won like this massive honeymoon getaway thing, and they can't take it because they have some sort of food poisoning, so they offer it up to their siblings to go. The problem is that these two hate each other. So they end up going and they have to pretend like they are married while they are there. And of course, hate to love, always my favorite, so I was real excited about this. They had me in the first half. I was in on it in the first half. I loved it. I loved their banter. I loved that they were goofy. There's such goofy scenes in this, and like that's so realistic. I feel like to relationships, it's not all like perfect. There's always like these awkward parts when you're getting to know people, and I love that it had those and some silly parts, and I loved just how unabashedly silly our main character is, and she's just so herself. I will say, big trigger warning, she is very open about her body and how unhappy her body makes her feel, and it is brought up many times throughout the story, so if that's something that triggers you, please be aware of that. But for the most part, I really enjoyed their romance. That's not all the story though. If it would have been just that, I would have been okay. Now I will say there's no like overly detailed sexy scenes. This is probably rated like PG-13. No R scenes. Slightly upsetting. It is what it is. But the last quarter of this book is more about their lives when they come back from the honeymoon and dealing with some aftermath that has happened, and it was not, I didn't like it. It was like they needed to beef up the story more, so they added like this second plot line thing going on and this conflict that happens at the end, and I just didn't care for it. It was whatever at that point. Like I was just pushing through to finish the story. So I'm giving that a 4 stars. Again, the end wasn't necessary in my opinion. I feel like it could have been kind of cut down. Some other things could have happened. That's the main thing, but the rest of the story I really enjoyed. I just thought it was so much fun. Next we have The Best Laid Plans. Now this does come out this month. I knew within the first 25 pages that I was going to absolutely adore this, and I kind of knew reading the synopsis. This is about a girl who finds out that she essentially is the last virgin in high school, and she meets a college guy, and she really likes him, but he's so cool, and they call him James Dean because that's who he apparently looks like, and she is afraid that he is going to know that she is a virgin. So she enlists the help of her best friend in order to teach her to not be a virgin. Things go awry, as I'm sure you can guess. This was so addicting. I love this. It takes place in a small town, and it felt very reminiscent of high school in a small town. Essentially, she makes a joke that like everyone's sleeping with everyone and they're trying to get the highest score, and she's still trying to put the batteries in the remote controller, whatever. That's what it seems like. There is a lot of teen drinking in this, just fair warning, but again, very reminiscent, I feel like, of a small town. There's nothing to do in a small town but sex and alcohol. So it's mentioned a lot, like almost every interaction, every chapter has some sort of underage drinking in it, so trigger warning for that. Getting into this though, this had some of my favorite steamy, kissy scenes that I think I have ever read. I went back and reread them several times as I was reading it, and then also went back in and read it. And I just absolutely love the chemistry between all the characters because it's kind of, it's very reminiscent of how like you can get feelings for someone and also have different feelings for someone else, and they can mean totally different things. And I just thought it was done so well in portraying that. The only issue I really had with this, I mean, the writing was so good. I thought the storyline was so good. I absolutely love our main character. Like, she is just very honest about things, and I love that this brings back, like, talking openly about sex with women. I really enjoyed the female representation that this had towards sex and things like that, kind of taking that back. But my biggest thing was that there is something that happens between, I don't really want to spoil it, but there's been something happening between these two characters for quite a while, and I thought it wasn't handled very well in the end. I thought it was, I don't know, like there was things that were forgiven that I felt like needed to be discussed more and talked about more and had more repercussions that didn't. So I ended up giving this a 4.5. That was really my biggest annoyance, and it only happened at the end. I was just expecting a little bit more of a blow up from things, so it is what it is. I really enjoyed everything else about it. Then we have the Prince and the Dressmaker. This is a graphic novel that has been sitting on my shelf for forever, and this is about a prince who hires a dressmaker who has kind of made this outlandish outfit that gets a lot of attention, and originally she is fired for it, but the prince takes her on because he likes to dress up as a woman in his spare time. So he hires her, and in turn he gets her creations out there. The problem is that no one can know who either of them are. The prince likes that, our dressmaker does not, and it ends up causing conflicts within this. I really enjoyed this. I love the artwork. I thought it was really cute. It's a really quick read. There's not that much writing and dialogue. I love the artwork. I just loved how this kind of unfolded. I loved the relationships between the different characters, and overall it was just a really fun read. I wish there had just been more to it, I guess, like a little more story to it instead of, I don't know. There just wasn't much going on. So I ended up giving this 4 stars. Then I have If I'm Being Honest, and this was the group book going into reading-a-thon, and we did do a live show with the authors, which was absolutely fabulous. I can leave a link to it down below for you guys if you want to go and revisit that. But this is about a girl who is known as being a bitch. She has always been that way, and she believes that she is just bluntly honest. That is all well until she really likes a guy and finds out that he is absolutely turned off and disgusted by her behavior towards others. So she decides she's going to look for forgiveness essentially from all these people that she has wronged. So she makes a list of people to go to and kind of right these wrongs and tries to make sure that, you know, her crush is seeing what is happening. She starts with Brendan, who she originally ruined his whole life way back when, and has made him a social outcast. So he is quite a work because he wants nothing to do with her, and she is determined to make sure that he forgives her. So of course she ends up spending more time with him and also her crush, and you know, things develop not the way that we think they will. This is a Shakespeare retelling of Taming of the Shrew, and there is also references to Rocky Horror in this. So this was just destined to be a book that I loved, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. I will say, I think I started comparing it to some of the other contemporaries that I was reading, so it all felt a little jumbled at times in my head with some of the other things that have happened from some of the other books. And I also just feel the chemistry as much between these characters as I have in some of the previous books that I've read. And their writing is just so addictive. And I love the different underlying issues that are happening. Like, we have a mother who is kind of absent and dealing with her own mental illnesses and stuff. And we also have a father who is definitely absent and who we see where she gets her bitchiness from. So there's a lot of other issues happening. It's not just the romance, but I really enjoyed this. I give it a 4 out of 5 stars. And the last book that I ended up reading for the month was Deathless Divide. This is a chunk of a book. I was not expecting this large of a book. This is the second and last in the Dread Nation duology. I absolutely loved Dread Nation. Now I will say there has been some talk about Dread Nation having really poor rep for Native Americans. I honestly don't know. So listen to the people who are voicing the concerns on that. I'm not too sure. I honestly didn't even remember that much in Dread Nation. This one definitely talks about the injustices of a lot of people. So be aware that it's not always good stuff being said about people, but it is also during this time period. This is a historical dystopian, Dread Nation is about what happens after Gettysburg. The dead come back to life. And essentially this has zombies, and this deals with how African Americans have kind of been trained in order to be servants to white people in order to protect them from these zombies. We follow our main character, Jane, who has gone to this boarding school to learn to be a servant, and then she ends up messing up somehow, and she gets shipped out west to a new settlement in order to protect some people out there. Of course, this new settlement is hiding some secrets, and she wants to get to the bottom of it. There is a mad scientist involved. There's all kinds of craziness, and it is just action packed. You get to see more into Jane as she grows, but now you are also following a second point of view of Catherine, one of the other girls who went to school with her, was shipped out west with her as well. So you're getting both their point of views, and they're very different point of views. Jane is very gritty, she's unapologetic, I love her sassiness, and then we have Catherine, who is prim and proper and basically believes that she should be able to wear a corset while still kind of stabbing down zombies and things like that. So I love the differences between these two, but they get along so well at the same time. And this is essentially about them kind of traveling to new safety, to a new town, and the things that transpire there. There are losses along the way, and I just really enjoyed this. I didn't enjoy it as much as Dread Nation, though. I did feel like this one kind of had us feeling like we were going in circles at times, and it definitely starts taking away from the dead, and now we are focusing on something else altogether. There were some moments in this that had me like, oh damn, oh damn. So it still got me on some of the suspenseful aspects, but the overall writing just felt lacking for some reason in this one, and the story just felt a little duller than the original. But again, I still ended up enjoying this. Might have been the time that I've been reading this because I haven't been able to concentrate that well on things. I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. Whew! That was a lot of talking. And don't I ever do a lot of talking? Those were all the books that I read in March. Let me know what you guys read in March. If you guys are staying home, if you're staying safe, what are you doing? What are you doing to pass the time? I hope you guys have liked this video. Don't forget to subscribe to see future wrap-ups from me. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!